Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's Devops.com program, brought to you by TechStrong and Bunnyshell. My name is Cody J. Brown. I'm the host of TechStrong Learning, and we have an exciting presentation ahead. First, I have just a couple of housekeeping notes to cover. So today's session is being recorded. If you miss any of our discussion, or maybe you'd like to rewatch or share with a friend, the on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude our live session today. If you have any questions, and we really hope that you do, we want you to send those in to us using the Q&A tab, which can be found on the right side of your screen. That's also where you're going to find the chat tab, and that's where we want you to get to know your fellow audience members. Let us know your thoughts throughout today's program, or maybe just from where you're tuning in. And of course, before we close out, we are giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so be sure to stick around for the duration of today's program. So our topic today is creating ephemeral environments for CI/CD GitOps pipelines with Kubernetes. And I'm joined by Sorin Dumitrescu, VP of Engineering at Bunnyshell, and Cristian Blanaru, SRE Team Lead at Bunnyshell. So Sorin and Cristian, thank you both so much for joining me. Sorin, would you like to take it from here?
Sure. Thank you, Cody. Really excited to be here. So my name is Sorin, as Cody said, and today we will discuss a bit about creating ephemeral environments. I will do a short presentation on the current context, and then Cristian will do the interesting part of this webinar, meaning a real-life demo. In the end, for sure, we'll take some questions from you guys. We're more than happy to know how you feel about what we've done here and gather some first impressions. First, let's do a short introduction. As Cody already said, I am the VP of Engineering at Bunnyshell. I'm a software engineer at core. I've been in leadership since approximately 6 years. I'm a real fan of efficiency. Not having repetitive tasks done by human and allowing people to focus on what they like to do and bring real value to it. I'm going to also let Cristian introduce himself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Cristian. I'm one of the engineers at Bunnyshell. This is why I get along with Sorin so well. I hate manual labor. I try to automate anything and everything ever since I had to upload loads of PDFs manually. I'm really excited about what we're going to show today.
Great. Thank you, Cristian. So a couple of words about Bunnyshell, and then we'll move on to the issues at hand. So we are a group of people which were oriented towards solving developer issues. We're keen on removing bottlenecks and removing non-essential tasks from day-to-day work of developers to allow them to focus on what they love doing, which is working on the applications, writing code, designing architecture, and so on. So we've built an environment as a service platform, a bit more about this later. And our aim is to enable true self-service for environments for both developers and other roles within the company. So the current context is that there hasn't been too much end-to-end testing done in the pipelines until now. And obviously teams are doing it, but less than they'd wish to. Traditionally, they've run unit and integration testing in the pipeline. Part of that is due to the longer times in which end-to-end tests are written. Part of that is due to the fact that end-to-end tests are a bit harder to run. And probably the most important is that end-to-end tests are more sensitive to the current state of the environment. So having a reproducible environment, being able to start with the same context each time was crucial for that. But this implies creating environments from scratch to do this, and this was pretty hard to do in the pipeline. So this resulted in a lack of real-world testing like the user would use the app. And as I said, the limited number of environments and the fact that the environments are stateful are part of the issue. Okay. So what we would need is to have production-like environments for pre-production. We need an easy way of creating environments in a reproducible manner. So we remove the limitation caused by the number of environments so we can effectively run tests in parallel. Those of you who have pipelines running end-to-end tests probably have hit some bumps along the way of running tests in parallel. And this is not an issue that you can surpass easily. It's also about application design, test design, and working much more towards this. So what we would need would be a way to create dynamic environments, in fact, right? We would need a way to be able to spin up environments without compromises, environments that look and feel like the production environment, and be able to do this whenever we need them. This could be for development purposes, environments on which developers would develop on remotely, and this we truly hope to eliminate the classic "it works on my machine" saying for developers with this. Staging environments or QA environments would be used for manual testing or automated testing, and also they would be either spin up by some rules like creating a pull request, or just on demand, like whenever someone needs it. It could be a few clicks or CLI command, which is run by a more technical person. Before we move any further, I just want to clarify this terminology of preview environments, or ephemeral environments as they called. They're environments which last for short periods of time, just as long as they're needed. Usually they're spin up when a pull request is created, and as soon as that pull request is either merged or closed, the environment gets discarded. But they could be also created on demand by several rules. Sorry for my voice. I have a bit of a trouble here, but nevertheless, I decided not to insert any Godfather excerpts in this webinar. So in order to move towards a concrete solution, we would need some technological foundation to be in place. And in our opinion, this technological foundation is in place today. We have what it needs to be able to move this environment-related context further, to move the story further. First of all, we have the containers, which I'm not gonna talk about what they actually do, because I'm assuming the audience already knows what containers are pretty well, but frequently underestimated fact of the containers is that it allows for separation of concerns. It allows for developers to include the dependencies which are needed for the applications and package those together with the application. And it allows the ops teams to not worry at all about libraries, packages, and so on. Historically speaking, you all know that things were done in a different manner, like developers would have to raise a ticket for an ops team to install some packages in staging, then in production, and so on. Versions could easily differ here. We're talking about minor versions, but still, there are real concerns here towards bringing the dependencies which are needed by the application together with the application and deploying them in a single package, and containers truly allowed for this. Also, I'm assuming that most of you had prior experience with classic stages or maybe even current experience with a fixed number of environments. They usually bring on state with them. And managing state is a really, really difficult thing to do. Like you'd have a staging environment maybe blocked by some changes which were brought by a certain branch, and you are not able to deploy anything else on that staging because it might have, I don't know, dropped a column in the database, and every other branch of the application crashes when deployed because of that missing column, or there's a wide variety of things to be careful here for. But containers on their own are a bit tedious to manage at scale. Like if you have an app running 50 microservices or more, it can become pretty ugly, pretty fast to manage all those dependencies through, I don't know, environment variables, basically just linking the containers, the applications themselves to one another. So orchestrators came into the picture. The clear winner of the battle is Kubernetes, and it's probably here to stay. It's obviously the glue that we needed for the containers. And as the project is described, it's a platform for building other platforms. And we've taken this literally and had a go at it here at Bunnyshell. We've built our platform on top of Kubernetes, and not only. As I previously said, you need reproducible environment. You need to be able to replicate what you're doing each and every single time. And Kubernetes is a very efficient way to do this with containers. Also, it's very good when running a large number of environments. It's very cost effective. It scales very easily with a few tweaks along the way. It's not out of the box, but it's fairly trivial to set up. And very important, it allows for isolation between these environments, like through isolation, either through network policies or other mechanisms, and it provides great flexibility with this. So obviously we're in a point where the current technology supports building environments dynamically, building ephemeral environments or preview environments. And Argo CD is just one of the projects that does this. Argo CD is a really awesome tool, and probably just naming it a tool doesn't do it justice. But I think you get the point. It does a lot of things well. It allows you to manage the environment definition or the application definition, as its concept says, through a declarative way. It also allows for building a layered architecture, like nesting things and patching, sorry, and packaging things, bundling things together. And it employs the Gitops principles. having a single source of truth is really mandatory for reproducibility and for ensuring that things are the same way every time an environment gets deployed. Also, using Gitops comes with some, let's say, side benefits, but they're not really side benefits. They're more like design benefits. You get governance out of the box, and also you get documenting of changes out of the box. If you're working with pull requests, which you should do, really. Regarding creating the preview environment, Argo CD can be set up to handle this. You could use a pipeline to orchestrate things and maybe have a template for an application manifest, an Argo application manifest, then perform some replacements or some kind of templating there, and spin up environments, apply those manifests using Git as storage. You'd probably use Git as storage, and I do these air quotes because you're basically creating other Argo applications and just committing them in Git, and Argo is keeping track of them. This also is necessary in order to perform the cleanup after the environments are no longer needed. But, and there's a but, I know that the audience here is DevOps mostly, but from what we know from the market, all in all, developers find it too complex to manage. So you have Kubernetes, which is a really complex system, really powerful, but complex and with a bit of a learning curve there. You have the whole ecosystem around it, many tools like bringing different aspects of functionality and being part of a puzzle. It's a bit like of creating a puzzle for me, creating an ecosystem around a Kubernetes deployment. It works really well. They fit really well together. The concerns are really well separated, but obviously you need a lot of knowledge and you need to invest a lot of time in staying up to date with what's current, and things change at a pretty alert pace. So for developers who have their own alert pace to keep up with in software development, it's really impossible to stay aligned with both of these and be a really good developer and a really good DevOps at the same time. So DevOps expertise is definitely needed in order to do this, not just to set up, but also to maintain. We all know that usually these kind of projects tend to seem like they're fire and forget, like I'm gonna put the system in place and then there's gonna be no maintenance at all. But usually this is not the way things really go in practice. Maintenance will be needed and will be constant. And DevOps resources are probably the worst kind of resources for a company to recruit on. I also felt this on my own, and not just talking about studies here. So we'd better let the DevOps people handle the production where there's no alternatives, let's say, in mind. And probably it would be a good idea to leave pre-production to other systems where there's not a need for critical availability or recovery and so on. One other aspect which I want to emphasize also is that a system built around a tool like Argo CD will probably have some fixed rules in place, so it will work in the parameters in which it was designed to, but other needs might also arise. So maybe you'd not just want pull requests to create environments. Maybe you'd also want environments to be created on demand. Maybe somebody in the team wants to test out some things, or maybe you could use it past the engineering team or the ops team in a company, like in a sales team for doing demos, and the use cases might be extended well beyond the engineering team. Not gonna get into that, but this is a nice side benefit of implementing a system based on environment as a service. Which brings us to the next topic. The current status quo is changing, so a new category of products has also emerged. It's a pretty young category, like 1 year plus, but it's starting to get shape, and I suspect that it will pretty soon split into different categories, specializing on different pains, let's say, that solve. Currently, the environment as a service as a concept encompasses the preview environments, which I have discussed, development environments. These are environments for developers to be able to develop the code on and do the dev testing, maybe run automated tests before creating a pull request, and so on. And then we have on-demand environments, which can be used for staging, for QA, for collaboration with product teams, and so on. And the goal here is to have a dead simple creation of the environment. The goal is to have a one-click or one CLI command, to be one-click or one CLI command away from creating a new environment. And then, of course, waiting a few minutes until the build is performed and the actual Kubernetes deployment is performed. So Bunnyshell is a product which fits into this environment as a service category. We aim to have it easy, really easy for developers to start working with. So basically, we aim for allowing them to use the same things they use today, the same scripts, the same mechanisms they use today to deploy their applications, a bit generalized, parameterized, and then hooked into Bunnyshell and used very, very simple. We also make it easy to create environments, even trivial, and the benchmark here would be for a non-technical person to be able to create their own environment to test out something in a matter of minutes. And not the least, we're also very conscious about the costs, because obviously it sounds really good to have production-like environments, but when you start creating environments like that in a matter of minutes, and you create a lot of them, also costs may start to pile up. So there are a few mechanisms in place to limit this, like running environments only during business hours, or maybe putting some TTL on the environments, and so on. But either way, this is a matter of configuration. It's a matter of choice, and you can employ it or not. This was mostly it from me. it was the boring part of this webinar, and now I'm gonna pass on to Christian in order to do an intro for the demo and then do the actual demo.
Thank you very much, Sorin, but definitely not boring. I had a little bit to learn. It's always interesting to see the perspective from the developer level. At heart, I'm not really a developer. I'm more on the DevOps crowd as well. I actually asked some questions with some polls because I was curious, and there are some people with very mature pipelines, I will say. Some have them in place but are interested in what else is out there. There are some people who do not and don't plan to deploy to Kubernetes. Hopefully, you'll change your mind. It's really cool as a technology. And last but not least, I was curious about what people use to deploy Argo CD, OpenShift, Helm charts, Ansible. So a variety of tooling that's being used out there, which is great. This is why what's so great about Kubernetes. You can do things and you can do them in so many different ways, just to enable us and the developers to get things, to get those changes into production faster. Now, quickly, I'll go a little bit through my agenda. I want to just reiterate, just kind of a refresher. Why CI/CD? Why are we doing this? I'm going to showcase very briefly the application. We're going to look at how basically we were challenged to do a pipeline with Bunnyshell in a very specific context. We're going to run through that pipeline. And if we still have time, we're going to show you that it can be easier. You don't necessarily have to manage all this complexity depending on the tooling that you would like to use. And last but not least, questions. So first things first, why CI/CD? I'm waiting for the slide to jump. Oh, brilliant. Thank you. All right. So just as why are we here as DevOps people or engineers? Why? We really want to see small, manageable changes. We don't want big, bulky code changes to reach production. But to do that, we need to increase that deployment frequency. But ultimately, what's the goal? Honestly, for me, is I want to see changes reach customers. I want that value that they're paying for to be realized faster. This is the reason why I'm here. And the second best reason for me to do all this is I really like to be able to recover from failures faster. I'm not sure about you, but when there's something going bad, you really gotta have a solution pretty damn quick. So if you have this automation in place, if you have CI/CD, if you're smart about how you're doing it, it can increase the value that you deliver ultimately, not only to the company you work for, but also for the clients. At the end of the day, it's people at the end of this line who see your work and the changes that are being made. Hopefully this will resonate with some of you. Hopefully this makes sense, or that we all agree that this is why we're doing it. Now I'm gonna have to swap my screen in a very elegant fashion. Okay, so that we can see the application we'll be working with. I have to thank Sorin. He was kind enough to build it from scratch for us. So I'm very excited about this. Basically, it's an application with obviously a front end, a back end. Front end is React, back end is Node. This is what you'd expect, really. A database in the middle to tie things together. If I go and access it, you'll see it's a beautiful list that we've built, and we're storing the data in the database. I've added some very interesting titles, which I recommend for sure. And what we do, at Bunnyshell, for me, this is an environment. This is the template that I have that would summarize or contain all the components needed to run this specific application. You can have as many components as you want. That doesn't necessarily matter. So what I'd like you to think what I'd like you to think of Bunnyshell at this point, or of this environment, is this is just a template. And based on this, we can do a lot of great things. Now, the second thing, it's the pipeline. This is what we're here to do. Just one brief mention: we are not. We don't necessarily compare ourselves to Argo CD. We had the slide because we are asked quite often, "Are you Argo CD?" And no, we're not really. We do some other things as well, great things, and we'll showcase them a little bit later. However, for the purposes of learning and engaging with all of you, we wanted to keep it as real as possible. So we're just going to use Bunnyshell for the deployment part, but we wanted everything else to be done in GitHub via GitHub Actions to design our own pipeline and use Bunnyshell, just in case maybe you already have a lot of the pipelines in place and you might want to offload some of that managing all the environments and taking care of all those assets. So this is, hopefully some of you will be aware of, this is GitHub Actions. This is a run, of course, but I'm just going to use it to explain the pipeline I've built for all of you. Normally, as I'm sure most of you are aware, you just build these images in some fashion, and then even using other tools, some environment will be initialized, you run some tests, and then hopefully, if you care about cost, you'll perform some cleanup as well. It would be awful if you wouldn't, to leave all those environments running, wasting away resources in the cloud. But actually, as I was preparing for this webinar, I was faced with a challenge. Sorin decided that would be far too easy for me to do. So he decided to do a little tweak in the application where I actually need to know the URLs that will be created, because you need to interact with this application somehow to perform end-to-end tests, right? And that was interesting, because all of a sudden I couldn't just build images since I already needed a piece of information. So in essence, I ended up creating the environment first in Bunnyshell so that I can figure out what will be the unique IDs that will be used in the URLs. That's, if I recall correctly, that was the URL needed for the front end to talk to the back end.
Yeah, that's correct. So basically, the front end needs to know at build time the the domain of the backend of the API to which it will send requests to.
Yes, exactly. So it was a little bit more challenging, but it's always exciting, because we love to find solutions. We love to create and figure things out by ourselves. And I actually managed to pull it off by first creating the environment, which in GitHub Actions, you can extract certain pieces of information from these steps and then offer that link to, or the unique to the build step. Now, if you're interested exactly to go into the pipeline, and if you would like me to show you the code, definitely mention it in the chat. And after I run through this, I can definitely go a little bit and to show some of these specific points. So make sure you make some noise if that would be helpful for you all. Okay, this is our pipeline. We have a template. Now, what needs to happen? Basically, we want, whenever there's a push on the development branch, in my case, now, even this bit, it can be even with a PR. Actually, if I show it quickly, what triggers a GitHub action pipeline? It can be anything. I just chose to keep it simple to be a push to a branch. It could be a PR, so to keep it proper ephemeral with only those code modifications. And to this extent, I'll go ahead and make a tweak. So we've already seen this application. I'm going to try to alter the background just so that it's more visual for everyone. I'm going to put it here, 23, and I'm going to commit the changes. Now, if everything is OK, and this is the moment I start shaking a little bit, if I go to GitHub Actions, yes, we can see that the pipeline was triggered. And the way I know, so it starts with the creation of the environment, and it already finished. Actually, if I go in Bunnyshell now, I will see demo books 53. Now remember, these are all unique builds. We want to make sure that small changes are integrated and tested. So they have to be unique in some essence. I had to be creative with how I create my template. Now, just a quick note on that. I'm using a Helm chart in order to achieve all this. So actually, I've created with using Sorin's code. I've created, well, not with his code. I created my own templates that would leverage the containers that are built from Sorin's code. And since we want it to be ephemeral, the most important thing is to have the image tag somehow parameterized. So this is the only way, or this is one of the ways in which you can achieve ephemeral environments. You have to have clever Helm charts which are parameterized. I also had to obviously offer some of the URLs to the Helm chart because we will want to access that application at the end. And Bunnyshell is very clever and knows if it sees an ingress component, which suggests that someone should be able to access it, it's clever enough to go and create it. So we can see that we're at the stage where we're building the images. To this effect, there's not a lot of cool things I can explain here. I'm sure the build part you're all quite comfortable with. Maybe the interesting thing or the bit that is useful is how I got the unique. Oh, yep.
Just a second, sorry to interrupt. Someone from the audience asks you to zoom in a bit.
Sure. To the pipeline or?
I'm guessing it applies to everything. Yes, but.
Okay, I will try. I do apologize. I should have 125%. Okay. So I was just mentioning very quickly that here the important bit was to make sure that I have an output for the create environment job, and I'm outputting the env unique, and that's going to be used during my build stage. So that's how I managed to achieve this feat. Now the images are built, they're pushed straight to Docker Hub. It's time to initialize the environment. This is basically for me. This means that at this point, this environment will get deployed. So it's demo books 53. Deployed, this is achieved via Bunnyshell. You can argue that this can also happen via Argo CD or using various other tools that you might be using right now. Behind the scenes, we actually, an environment for us is not just the containers. So for Bunnyshell, we can have Terraform modules if you have some dependencies in the cloud, like if you need some Lambda functions, or if you want to create other adjacent components, or maybe you need them, we can do that as well. So we really try to take a holistic approach to what an environment can be. Well, pre-production, we mean pre-production. Production-like, that's the term. Production-like, we really want to be production-like as close as possible, of course, within certain cost constraints. So at this stage, what's going to happen behind the scenes inside the cluster, you can see that the pods are being applied. Bunnyshell is going to wait sufficient time for everything to be ready. It's going to go and also create some of the links and actually associate DNS records. Now, this is something that you might have to do by yourself or have a strategy for it. And at this point, we're done. The environment is ready. It's using the latest image. Now you're going to say, how do we know? How can we be sure that you haven't cheated in the meantime? Actually, as soon as the simple tests are going to start running, I will output the link so that we can visually see what's happening there. So the simple tests are here. Great. This is the link. And we have a beautiful thing. So that's how you would know that actually the code change is what I did. And at this stage, in the pipeline, you can run, once the environment's up and running, that's the moment when you can actually start to run your tests. In my case, I chose a relatively simple, test because it's really, this is a point where you can use your imagination. So I'm just trying to get the status code of the backend to see if everything is all operational. But here you normally have a suite of end-to-end tests. You can start using Cypress or Selenium as the one. Selenium. That name is strange. Selenium. So if your tests run correctly, it is all beautiful and dandy. And in my case, I also have a cleanup stage. So I don't necessarily want, once the test run, if everything is okay, why would I ever want to hang on to this environment? I don't. Because at this point, you can start to inform the important parties. If you have some chat ops there, you can start to inform, okay, everything is good. Maybe it's time for the peer review. Maybe you already performed the peer review and you have some automated procedure to push this onto the next stage. It's all up to you, but cleanup is important. Now, one or a couple of notes on this pipeline. I'm going to try to fit everything in. Critique, a little bit of critique. On one side, it's very beautiful that I have the cleanup, but the first thing you have to ask yourself, this worked flawlessly, but what if the tests fail? And this is why I linked my cleanup to the tests. I don't want to erase this environment if the tests failed. Because for me, it would be important now to go in that environment and see, okay, what went so horribly wrong? I want to still keep it until I can figure out what I would need to adjust in order to make it successful. But you can argue that in some cases, as soon as I don't even want that it should have been deleted straight away. And the second critique to this format of the pipeline, if my build fails, I would still go through, it would still kind of keep this create environment. So I would still have a stub. But, so I should have added on failure, just delete this environment. However, nothing was deployed yet. There are no components running in my cluster. So, okay, it's going to be a little bit messy in the interface. But in my defense, I'm not using company resources. Okay. So this was, I agree, quite a speedy walkthrough. I'll just show you one more quick thing on how, for example, Bunnyshell can abstract most of this. And then any questions you have, anything you want me to go into, we can start to make it a more lively conversation so that we can basically hear your opinions and to see how we can further basically answer your questions. So the last thing. So it took me some time to design the pipeline, and I'm sure most of the people in this crowd will agree, unless you already have these templates set. When you start from scratch, doing it for the first time in a specific way, it's demanding. It's not that easy. It takes time. So Bunnyshell can actually abstract pretty much everything I've done here. So I have the application running, right? I've demonstrated it at the beginning. It's running, still running, it's all good. But if I wanted in Bunnyshell, I can abstract that whole creation process by ticking a box. So I just want ephemeral environments. This is already set to the master branch. And I want to make sure that if there's anything if there's a PR hitting it, the ephemeral is created. I can set the destination cluster where I want it to go. So all this is what I have. This is all I have to do in order to get an ephemeral environment, and then I could just plug it into the pipeline, get the URLs, plug it in, and start testing. So I have here open. Oh, I will apologize. I gotta be sure that I'm editing the master. I'm gonna create a PR with the master patch 2. I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna actually try to alter another value, and we'll propose the change. So for everyone in the crowd, this is not terribly fascinating. Basically, it's someone created a pull request, like Sorin mentioned. No? On a pull request, we want that ephemeral, we want to run the tests. So the only thing I needed to do, or the only thing the developer would need to do, is do the pull request. And if the environment is set up in the correct way, just like that, it knows to take all the components, it knows everything that is required for my application to run. It's going to go ahead and build it. So I actually don't need to perform the build stage. It's going to build it on the Kubernetes cluster under the person, so under my organization's control. Then it's going to go and upload these images to the correct registry that's set up. At the end, we're going to create all the Kubernetes manifests. So as I've demonstrated, I use the template, and it's a Helm chart. But actually, if you're developers, if you know that your developers have Docker Compose, and you don't want to bother yourself with creating the Helm charts yet, if you just want a more speedy solution to some of these environment problems, not environmental, you don't have to. Basically, behind the scenes, we have a Docker Compose for this application. We pull the components, we create the manifests ourselves, we apply them on the Kubernetes cluster. We're going to wait to see that everything is spun up, just like in the previous case. And then once everything is running, we even go ahead and create all the DNS records so that we can interact with the application. So all the pipeline, everything I've created myself here, I would say arduously, it can be so beautifully abstracted using a tool like Bunnyshell. Now, there is one extra thing that I would like to add. In this scenario, I had a monorepo, right? I'm using it's a monorepo scenario. I have all my components in one repository. So creating the pipeline was less challenging than a situation where I had all these components in different repos, and it would have complicated the pipeline. I'm pretty sure everyone who had to deal with multi-repo pipelines, they know it's trickier to set up something like this. But luckily, this is another great thing. Bunnyshell abstracts that as well. So I can easily pull components from various repositories, and it will sense, Sorin would know the technical term for it, how it figures out. For me, it's magic, I have to admit, a little bit of magic, that it knows, hey, out of the 10 repos that you're using, in that one, there is a pull request. So I'm going to create an ephemeral so that you can start working on it ASAP. So this is magic, right? Or
am I like it webhooks, but yeah, it works well.
Magical webhooks. That's what it is. Okay. The environment, obviously, since I'm building the images and performing all the steps, is going to take a little bit of time. But I do want to show that actually we can take care of the cleanup as well. So is there an immediate question that I can tackle right now whilst this is finalizing?
So, sorry. We have some questions which I already answered in the Q&A section. We also have a new question. Is there any dashboard within Bunnyshell that reports on metrics on testing, failures, downtime, releases, deployment? And does Bunnyshell offer any insights on how using the tool by the end user can be improved to drive end results? Apologies again for my voice. I truly hope that you understood what I was trying to say. So I'm not sure what organization you have connected to this. Christian, maybe you can click on the engineering metrics until the environment is deploying.
Do you want me to go into the Bunnyshell one?
Yeah, we can do that also.
Okay, that's allowed.
So this is the organization we're currently using in the engineering team here at Bunnyshell.
Metrics. Oh.
And we have pretty basic reporting section here. We have basically 2 of the 4 DORA metrics covered, which are average cycle time and deployment frequency. So these are the 2 metrics which are directly, the 2 DORA metrics which are directly impacted by Bunnyshell. And as you can see, we have an increase of, this is actually a bad thing. We have increased the cycle time with more than a quarter in the last month. But this is due to the fact that we're working hard on our Bunnyshell version 1.1, which we will be releasing in in the beginning of November. So this is the cause due to which we've released less in the last month, because we're preparing a more serious release which packages multiple things.
So no, there will be no repercussions so far.
No.
It's all good. It's all part of the plan.
Yeah, so basically you can select the time interval on which you want to see the metrics, and you're good to go.
Hey, look at my deployment frequency. I'm doing great. Except the coding time. I'm definitely not a coder. That's so obvious. It's unbelievable. But yes, it's possible to fine-tune a little bit. It's also possible to look at specific repos. So if I want to look good, I think this is the one that makes me look better. So it's just a little bit of bad pickup time. So it does break down, and it will definitely be enhanced in the future as we get more feedback on what's really working or what is really needed out there in order for higher level managers to drive value from these metrics. Because at the end of the day, it's a number, but there are always considerations, I would say. You can't just take this as a number and this is bad. There's a subtext to it. It's important to know the context, just like in our case, actually. So in the meantime, as we were discussing, we can see that the environment is deployed. I can actually just go ahead and click on the link, and now we have very different purple color, which
maybe
is...
you would also, sorry to interrupt, maybe you would also show the GitHub PR page, just to highlight the comment.
Yes.
There.
Basically, if your developers don't necessarily enjoy getting out of Git, all the links are going to be made available right here and then, so you can immediately start interacting with them. So this is another great. It's a small thing, but it makes a big difference. I would say small thing, but a big difference. Right. I will say close because I do not necessarily approve of that color. Just to show that cleanup is also done. And this concludes my demonstration for today. I will share the links for the repos. You're right, they're public, so I don't mind sharing. Oh no, someone already tackled that. So it's public. You can look at the code. I will not accept PRs because it's a fork of a fork, and it's going to be another fork. So please don't hit me with that. And now, if you have or if you'd like to see something in more detail, if you could benefit from anything, please let me know or let us know in the chat or the Q&A, and we can tackle them. I do have, just in case, where's the queue for the poll? Start polling. I do have one more poll because I'm really I want to understand better how this was useful for for hopefully most of you who joined us. But this is pretty much it. Thank you very much for joining, and let's see what is in the chat.
Sure. So it looks like Sorin actually covered a lot of the questions in the text box, but let's go ahead and bring them onto the air. Starting with, is Bunnyshell compatible with Angular?
Yeah, so as I already answered in the thread, Bunnyshell is technology agnostic. As long as you have an app which is containerized, we can deploy it. You can start from Docker Compose if you have Docker Compose which you're using locally, and we will create a manifest, a Kubernetes manifest. With it, basically, we'll create a deployment with a service and an ingress if you have exposed URLs. Getting to the point of Angular, there's no need to create a container for that. Obviously, if you have a package JSON file, and Angular does, so does React or Vue or any other front-end framework. So if you have a package JSON, we'll know to deploy that specifically in a container for you. So no need to do anything. You can just create an environment in Bunnyshell, add an application, then select the repository, and basically you're good to go. If you have certain build arguments that you need to specify, obviously you need to put those parameters in Bunnyshell also. But if not, you can just click next, 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 and that's all. You'll have your own URL publicly available through Bunnyshell, which you could develop on. You could also do remote development on it. This is something that we this is something that we didn't really cover. So basically, you would be able to do remote development on that Angular application, and you would obtain an SSH shell. You would write something like Bunnyshell remote development start, and then select the environment and the application. And then you'd have an SSH shell into that container, and you'd run whatever command you're running on local environment. You'd also run it there to build and watch the files. And as you change the files on your local machine, they will get synchronized, and the application will do the hot reload. I'm not sure what command you would run on Angular, maybe npm start or something like that.
All right, so it looks like we've got time for one more question. So creating an environment for every, it looks like you kind of just covered that one. So any recommendations to deal with namespaces for ephemeral environments when cloud resources are in place?
Yeah, so there's an if statement here on the first one. There are two situations. One in which the environment you're deploying can be deployed all into a single namespace, like you have, like in the example we showed previously. It's a simple example, front and back end database, right? All three can be deployed in the same namespace. So this boils down to creating namespace, a new namespace every time. And the only prerequisite is for this to be unique and also predictable. So there are two prerequisites. The unique is also handled with the predictable part if the name you generate includes the PRID and the repo. This should be unique enough combination, right? You'd have something like demo books, which is the repo name, dash PRID, which is, I don't know, 54, 100, etc., right? So you'd create the namespace and deploy all the applications in that single namespace. Or if your application requires by design, your environment, requires by design to have applications running in different namespaces, it's basically the same technique of incorporating a unique part in the environment, in the namespace, sorry. So you'd have like front end dash repo name dash PRID, backend dash repo name dash PRID, something like that. It's just about creating a unique and predictable part in the namespace name and having the necessary privileges to create namespaces, obviously.
Awesome. So it looks like we are at the top of the hour, but I did want to give you guys the opportunity to leave us with any final remarks you'd like to make for our audience before we go off the air.
Yeah, sure. So please don't hesitate to reach out for anything that you'd like. We'd also love just sharing ideas, gathering your feedback, your thoughts on it. We're always keen on discussing environment-related issues and tech-related issues in general with anybody. Don't hesitate to reach out. And you all know KubeCon is coming. We're gonna have a presence there, and we're gonna have a stand in SU70. I'm gonna also write this down on the chat because I'm not sure anybody can understand me at this point, but trying really hard here.
I would like to say a big thank you to Sorin because I heard his voice going up and down, slower. So thank you very, very much for joining and being able to pull through.
Thank you very much, Cristian, for the demo. Thank you, Cody, for having us, and especially thank you all for attending. Don't hesitate to ping us if you have any questions or thoughts on what we've discussed here today or on Kubernetes and environments in general. Thank you very much for attending.
Well, Sorin and Cristian, thank you both so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time to put together the not just the demonstration, but the slides themselves. So thank you so much for this deep dive. I would like to remind our audience that this session was recorded. So following this program, you'll receive an email with a link to access that recording on demand, or you can find it living on the Devops website at devops.com/webinars, and just be sure to look in the on-demand section. So I did promise we would be giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So our 4 winners are Emma L, Julian R, Mihai S, and Paul L. So to our 4 winners, congratulations. Keep an eye on your email inbox to claim that gift card. But if you don't happen to see that email, do check your spam folder. I'd like to thank Bunnyshell for sponsoring today's program. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us today. As soon as we close out, a webinar survey will pop up on your screen. So we do really want you to fill that out for us. But otherwise, we hope to see everyone at an upcoming TechStrong Learning program. Everyone have a great rest of your day. And Sorin, Cristian, thank you once again.
Have a great one. Bye.
You're welcome. See ya.